Welcome to the Elevate Your Equity podcast, where we, as married busy professionals, leverage real estate investing to unlock the 3+1 degrees of freedom: health, location, time, and financial.
And today I'm super excited to bring on Mr. Doug Spence. How you doing, Doug?
Doing great, Derek. How are you?
Awesome, man. Thank you so much for coming on the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm really excited.
Absolutely. And for people who don't know who Doug is an investor out of San Diego, California. He's also a Navy officer full-time and does real estate on the side currently. He has experience with a bunch of out-of-state burrs and flips, does off-market lead generation, and recently became a general partner on a syndication fund that invests in RV parks. So that's awesome. And he's also married to his beautiful wife, Kate, and they have a newborn son named Calvin. So Doug, you are a very busy guy. You got a young family at home, you got a full-time job, and you've also got a full-time side hustle. So really cool. And let's hear a little bit more about your story. Why don't you tell the audience and also tell us a little bit about how you got excited about real estate investing and how you got to today?
Yeah, absolutely. So, originally from Houston, Texas, and like you said, I'm active duty Navy. So I've been in the Navy since 2009. Lived multiple locations, lived in Japan, lived in California, Florida, kind of lived all over. And I was stationed in Pensacola, Florida as a flight instructor in 2015. And that's when I really started getting the real estate bug, because I was renting a home for $1,500. And I realized, just looking at like Zillow, I was like, I could buy a home that's nicer, newer, and just overall a better home. And my mortgage would be $1,100. So it was like that was the extent of my real estate analysis at the time, but it was sound analysis, right? So ended up buying that house with the plan to rent it out when I moved away from Pensacola. And little did I know I'd be able to rent it out for like double the mortgage payment. I mean, I just bought this house. It was a great neighborhood, bought it at a great price at the right time. I just paid full retail, right? And ended up renting it out, still own that house today. And so I kind of got the bug that way. I was like, okay, this makes a lot of sense. Did my taxes the first time when I had rental income, and I was like, wow, this is amazing. So then I got into turnkey investing. So where you're buying from a company that basically flips homes, and then they sell them to investors, and they're already cash flowing from day one. So I did that. That's a good option for people that are maybe they're working full time. They're too busy to do their own stuff on the side, but they still want to own real estate. So that's a good way to get your foot in the door on real estate investing. So I ended up buying 3 of those from a company. Great company, great guys, also Navy folks. And then it's at one point I realized I really want to get more cash flow to be able to reach my long-term goals. I'm not going to hit that by just buying single family homes. So then I was like, okay, I need to start burring. So that's why I got into, read David Green's book about burring and long distance real estate investing. And that's what got me into the burrs and flips and stuff. So yeah, it's been a good journey, but I've learned a lot.
Yeah, really, really cool. And you make it sound very casual, right? But I know that you've got a full-time career, you have a family, right? You have a life as well. Can you talk just a little bit about how, you were able to make the space for this? Because it's great to be able to do this with, profit in mind, but like, what was your overall why behind figuring out how to do this and why you were wanting to do this for yourself and your family?
Yeah, that's a great question, because I was actually planning on getting out of the military around the same time I bought that house. And I was like, oh, I'll work for some big corporation, find some good paying job. But as I listened to Bigger Pockets and learned more about real estate, I was like, I don't want to just climb some corporate ladder and, end up getting more pay, but working more. And then the government takes more of your income if you're W-2. So I was like, I need to, what's the way to do it? The way is real estate, from self-educating via Bigger Pockets podcasts and books and all that. So I ended up eventually reaching the goal of, I want to totally replace my income and my wife's income, our W-2 income, with passive real estate income by the time I'm out of the Navy. So that became the goal. And then it was like, okay, how do I, like long, 5 to 10 year goal? Because I have 7 more years at least. So that's like the far away goal. So then it's like, okay, how do I achieve that? And then it was like, okay, I can buy houses. And then I'm like, okay, I have to buy a lot of houses to go. So how can I, if I'm burring though, I can really accelerate that, by using, you need a lot less capital than if you're buying turnkey or you're just buying off the market. So then just gradually learning more and more about real estate, getting connected with folks that are involved in real estate in GoBundance and another mastermind group that I'm in, and seeing how these people have done it, and seeing how the crazy entrepreneurs and real estate addicts in GoBundance really, inspired me to reach bigger, I guess you could say, increase that ceiling and see what's possible. So yeah, that was a huge part of it.
Yeah, I love that. I love that answer, that you're surrounding yourself around people that are doing really inspiring things. And originally it started as like kind of this passive income goal, but really it's more about becoming a bigger person, just because you're seeing all these people around you, right? Like it's a community that you're surrounded by that's inspiring you to think bigger. And I think that's really important for the listeners to take away, that if you're looking to do something, first find a why. If you just say, oh, I'm going to start a side hustle up because I want to retire by the time I'm 40 or something like that, that's awesome. And it's really great, but doesn't touch at the core of who you are as a person. It's not going to be the thing that's going to drag you through the ups and downs you got to go through in order to be the person you have to be and make the sacrifices you got to make in order to become the person you need to be to create the wealth that you're looking for. So it's kind of a weird thing to back up into it, but I think that why is a really big piece of it.
Yeah. And I think a lot of people hear that and they're like, oh, well, he just wants to like retire early and like sit on a beach. And it's not really about that. It's more about having the freedom to not have to work a W-2, and the freedom, I 100% will still work. There's no way I'm going to hit 45 and retire and like just do nothing. Like I'm not the type of person that can do that, but I like the ability to have the freedom to spend time with my family. Whereas if I was some corporate job, they'd be like, we need you to move here. We need you to do all this stuff. And it's really more about the time freedom. So
yeah, I think that's really important to keep in mind. Love it, man. So let's talk about the transition that you had, because I know we could explore a lot about BRRRRs. We can talk a lot about that, because BRRRRs, it's a beautiful art form. I love doing it, and it's a lot of people underestimate how difficult it is, because it's like, in theory, it makes a lot of sense, and it's something that you can do once you understand how to do it. But man, Doug, there's a lot of touch points, right? You got to buy right. You got to have the right contractor. You got to fit inside your budget. Then you got to rent the right price. And then you have to refinance at the correct ARV. So all of that has to go perfectly, right? Or at least you have to build rate. Yeah, and get a good interest rate. And all these things are happening over like a 6 to 8 month time period, right? While you're doing these BRRRRs. So your money's locked up. You're most likely attending to it daily, because you have all these things to take care of with the rehab and everything. So it's a romanticized process, but why don't you break down, actually, before we jump into the transition to commercial real estate, why don't you break down like the sacrifices you made to make the BRRRRs happen? Because you kind of like glossed over it as if it was something, that you just did here and there, but I know that there's a lot of effort that goes behind it. So can you tell us a little bit about what that experience was like?
Yeah, so it's a lot of time spent before going into work and after getting home from work and on the weekends, and honestly, a lot of emails sent while I'm at work and phone calls while I'm at work. And thankfully, I've been able to have a job over the last few years that if I'm not deployed, I don't have to spend 12 hours at work. Like it's much more reasonable. So that helps out a lot. So I'm able to, go into work maybe a little bit later and, come home a little bit earlier. So that's been very helpful. But, that being said, it is, I'm up by 5 or 5:30 pretty much every day. It's also good being in San Diego, because the market that I do the BRRRRs in is in Oklahoma. So if I wake up, that's 2 hours ahead of me. So it's, business at, 7 a.m. Pacific is 9 a.m. In Oklahoma. So that is definitely helpful. But yeah, I mean, sacrifices, I don't like to use the word sacrifices for that, but it's just a lot of waking up early, and like, you got to want it, because it's definitely challenging. And to get into the actual process, like, you really hit the nail on the head, because in the podcast, it's like, oh, buy, rehab, rent, refinance, repeat, like sounds, it's simple, but it's not easy. So, but yeah, I think that the key parts of it are the buy and the refinance, because you have to buy well below market value to make it work. And in this market where it's like a crazy seller's market, and it has been for the last, really since I started BRRRRing, which was in summer of 2020, fall of 2020, it was tough to find deals then as well. Yeah. And that, we can get into the deal funnel and finding, off market leads and how I've done that. But yeah, finding, you have to buy this stuff at like a fraction of what it's worth in order to make it work at the end. So that's the first really tough part. And then, yeah, and then the refinance and stuff, because it's expensive. Refinancing these things is, the one I just did, just the lender fees and the rate buy down and all that was like $7,000 or something for a house that was worth 115,000, so it's a lot, and you got to shop around, and it took almost 2 months to close on the refinance from the time we started. Like, it's stressful and you're waiting for that appraisal the whole time. And that, the appraisal really is really important, like you said. So
Yeah.
it's stressful, but it's also rewarding because you can get something that's cash flowing with relatively little capital involved. So it's great.
Yeah, I want to say too that I think what you're doing is incredible and very, very inspirational, because in the market that I've come to know, slowly transitioning from a tertiary market to a secondary market. And so the deals that I was doing back in 2017 are definitely not there anymore now.
Yeah.
You have to work a little bit harder. They're still there. I agree with what you're saying there. But these people that think that you can go in and just do a burr on anything that looks there is very difficult, because you have this interesting dynamic, Doug, where you got this burr that you have to pick up at such a big discount, but the ARV and the rental value, it has to be there. So you have to somehow find this property that's got such a big enough problem, but yet it's still in a desirable area that no one else has picked it up, or you're doing something off market to find it before everyone else does. So let's talk about that real quick. So I just want to explore this, because this is your realm of expertise too. What does your off market acquisition machine look like to do these burrs? Like, just at a high level, what are you doing right now, and how are you taking advantage of those leads, and what does it look like for you on a day-to-day basis?
Yeah, so we focus on SMS, so text message marketing. So I started with I hired a VA to do cold calling. That didn't work. And then I started running my own campaigns with SMS before I'd go into work, and like text them throughout the day. And then I was like, I can't do this. I got to find. So I found a VA company that could help out and do it. And over the few months, ended up hiring them full time. So basically, how it works is my market is Oklahoma. So specifically Oklahoma City and Tulsa. So I pull the lists from PropStream based on the criteria and the neighborhoods that I want to market to. I always talk with my real estate agent there as well to get her opinion on that. And we pulled the list. We skip trace the list to get the phone numbers. And then we upload that to our software, our marketing CRM software. And then the VA markets to them. And then he sends us the leads. And then I send them to our agent in Tulsa, and she follows up with the leads. And we get first dibs on anything. If there's a property that they're motivated to sell, but it doesn't work for us, but she maybe has an investor that wants to buy it, or maybe they want to list it, then we split that profit with the agent. So it works well for the agent. She gets more properties for her buyer's list, or potential. She's got listings from leads that we've generated, and it works great for us because we have someone that we trust there that can go and take pictures of the house and get it under contract for us and all that. So big picture, that's how it works. And then recently we've started sourcing leads for other investors as well, specifically like agents and brokers and investors. Once I realized, I was like, man, everyone else is struggling finding deals. I have this funnel that really works well, and I can do it anywhere in the country. So I had that realization in Park City actually back in January. But yeah, that's kind of big picture how the funnel works. But it does work, so it's good.
Yeah, I love that, man. That's a great way to add value to yourself and others. And I think that's really cool that you've got that in addition to, again, I want the listeners to understand that this is a separate business too, Doug, because you could easily outsource the deal finding and just go to wholesalers and do burrs that way, right?
Yes.
Obviously, you're paying for that one way or another because the wholesaler has to be in business also. You've got the direct marketing business. You also have the burr business where you're working with your contractors and it's kind of integrated in with your other stuff. And then you've also got this fund thing as well on the commercial side. Let's talk about that real quick, because really what I want to do is I want to inspire the listeners to follow along in your journey, to do something on their own first, to get their feet wet in the single family space, because that's what I did. That's what a lot of serious real estate investors do starting out. But maybe some people want to go directly into commercial when they start. So can you talk a little bit about your transition from, I'm not going to say transition because you're still doing single families, but how now you're building your experience up in the commercial space right now, what that looked like and where you got inspired and how that occurred?
Yeah. So, I call it the natural progression of the real estate investor, right? So people get started doing single family homes, burrs and flips, and then they're like, this is great, this works. And then they're like, man, they do the math and they're like, I'd have to do like hundreds of these to, hit my goals. And, David Osborne's done that and it's worked for him. But tough part about the burrs and flips is you're doing everything. You're finding them, you're doing everything, right? Depending on how your system is set up. But if you can get into, the commercial space, whether it be multifamily, self-storage, whatever, then you can determine your strength, which is something you talked with us about a few months ago. You find your strength, what you're good at, and you join a team and you just be really good at that one thing, whether it's deal finding or asset management or underwriting or whatever. Now you're part of this bigger thing with people trying to achieve a bigger goal, whether it's, no matter the asset class. So that's kind of, that became one of my goals for 2022 was to get involved in more syndications with some folks that I have been following and, trust, and people, I like what they're doing and all that. So that's what kind of led to that. Yeah, it's the natural progression, especially for folks in like GoBundance, where it's, you're surrounded by these people that are doing the like, it's like, what, you bought a golf course, like all this crazy stuff. And you're like, what am I doing buying crappy single family homes? Like these people are buying resorts and God knows what else they're buying. So it really makes you stretch what's possible. So
yeah, I love that. Now, let me ask you too, though. I know that the mindset that it takes to go from the single family space to the multifamily space, you touched on it there a little bit, which was, you've got, you're moving from being a lone wolf. I mean, you're never really truly alone, right? But like you're the sole owner usually, right, in these things, right. Or it's you and one other partner, but you're right. Truly entering into something where you have a specified role and you're a small piece of the machine, or at least a smaller piece of the machine. And the idea is not to get a bigger piece of the pie, but just have a small piece of the pie and get more pies, right? That's the idea. Right. Can you talk a little bit about the mindset that must have been for you? Because I know, because this happened to me too. When I go into multifamily, I was like, I'm going to be giving away a lot of the equity. Like the equity is going to be split among a lot of people. And I don't know if I want that. I'd much rather keep it for myself.
Right.
Can you talk a little bit about that mindset? And did that happen to you at all? Or how did that work for you?
Yeah, I think it's really just being, I mentioned GoBundance again, but a lot of the microtribe calls and talking with folks and, you can, if there's like a $10 million apartment complex you want to do, like, yeah, you can do it by yourself, I guess. I don't know if anyone ever has, but like theoretically you could. If you wanted to underwrite everything, you wanted to go in there and inspect the whole property, you wanted to raise the money yourself, sure, great. But you're going to be so burnt out, you're not going to have work-life balance. You're probably going to make a lot of mistakes because there's no one is really good at everything needed to do for something like that. So it's really just being able to figure out what you're good at, leverage that strength, and join a team of other people. Because I'm not good at underwriting. I don't like living in Excel and figuring out IRRs. Like I hate that stuff. But there's other people that love that stuff and they're really good at it, but they don't like talking to investors or talking to people that potentially want to sell a property. Like I like that kind of stuff. I like talking to people, all that kind of stuff. But whatever, I'll do whatever I can do to not be in the Excel sheet, right? So it's teaming up with people and leveraging their strengths, and then taking and then you're splitting up that piece of the look at it. Many times you're doing a certain amount of work and you're getting a certain amount of equity in a commercial deal. How many single family homes would it take to get that same amount of equity? Like how many years of burring and flipping and all that goes along with that would it take to, for one, one small piece of the pie of the commercial is. So it's really just perspective. It's realizing that, you're getting a small piece of a $10 million pie or whatever, but that's still, that small piece of the pie is a lot bigger than, one burr project or two burr projects. So it's really perspective, and, it's fun working in a team with people, and leveraging each other's strengths and all that. So, it's just the natural progression.
I think it is. And it also speaks to the scalability of what it is you're trying to achieve, right? With the single family world, no matter what you're doing, it's you, like you're the impetus on things, right? And it's all on you. It's very lonely too. So you can have your spouse with you in one way or another, right? Where they're there to support you and they're there to be with you. And that's great. And you may have your vendors, your property managers, your agents and everything, but they're not really on the equity side for you, that you pay them a fee. And if you're not working with them and providing deal flow, then they don't work either, and they can find some other. So like a freelancer, right? But when you have equity partners, what's good for you is good for them. And what they find is good for them is also good for you. I think there's something beautiful about that, where you're holding people accountable on a much more intimate way, right? By being a part of a team. And so that's one of the reasons why I knew at the beginning that I liked the lone wolf strategy, but I knew that it was holding me back from something so much bigger, the scalability aspect there.
Yeah. The other thing that's cool is if I'm doing a BRRRR, and I've done, I guess we have our third or fourth BRRRR underway right now. And my sister-in-law, who's my business partner, she has been the private lender on all these projects. And it's great because I'm able to, we are able to do a project and she's able to make money off the interest. But if we're doing a bigger project, now I can say like, hey, lots of friends and family members, like everyone can get involved with this, right? So you can help other people invest. And a lot of people out there that, most people aren't in groups like GoBundance with all these different opportunities. So a lot of people, it's like stock market or that's it. Like that's the only investing option they have. And as you and I know, like there's so many better options out there, right? So
Yeah,
I mean, we could do a whole other podcast on that, but a lot of people they're not in the groups that we have with the access to opportunities that we have. So being able to open those opportunities up for other people, I think is another really exciting thing and something I like a lot about it as well.
Yeah, no, that's great. That's great. I love that. I love the fact that you can get extra people involved and do more good as well during this route, right? Because you can scale out. So let's talk a little bit about this path that you took, right? Do you recommend it for everyone, what you're doing? I mean, here we are, we're isolating this business that you're doing, right? In one specific conversation. But what we fail to remember a lot of times is that you also are working a full-time job and you've got kids at home now and you've got family, right? Obligations to uphold. Do you recommend the path that you took for everyone?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I guess it depends on their goals, right? I mean, I'm pretty involved on like the Bigger Pockets forums and different, Facebook groups where I try to like help other folks, especially fellow military members trying to build their real estate portfolio. That's like a big passion of mine. And so many people that are like, hey, should I buy this property in Cleveland? It's like, well, it depends. Like, what are your goals? Like, what are your goals? What's your risk tolerance? How much access to capital do you have? Like, it all depends. There's no right or wrong for anyone. But that's what's so cool about real estate. There's so many ways to make money in real estate, different asset classes, different strategies like lending. You can do wholesaling, BRRRRs, flips. There's so much to do that you just got to figure out what you want 10 years from now. What does that look like? And then you just back it up to what do I need to do this year, this month, this week, today? And maybe what you're doing today is just reading 10 pages in a book. Maybe it's reading 10 pages in Eric's book. So it's just backing it up to like in the one thing where he talks about those little dominoes, you just got to push over that one tiny domino and then that makes the next big domino fall, because if you look at your goals, like, man, my goal is to have, a gajillion dollars passive in 10 years. Like that's daunting. That's why you have to break it down to what do I need to do today? So, and maybe it's just reading a book. Maybe it's just having a conversation with another investor. Maybe it's listening to a podcast. So
yeah, that's great advice. And I think it's classic, timeless advice. I love it. I'm eating all this up right now. This is great stuff. So let me actually ask you, I'm going to go into this just a little bit more here before I ask you the final question. And then we head into our rapid round. I want to ask you, you sound like a very disciplined person. You're working in your full-time job in a place that I imagine you need to be very disciplined. But in addition to that, I wanted to ask you, you're waking up at 5:30 every morning. You're very busy with all that. How do you set and maintain the goals that you set for yourself? Like, how do you do all that? Because you have long-term goals and you break them out into short-term goals. Can you talk about your process there?
Yeah. So I think the way to do it is have accountability from other people because, and I'm in two mastermind groups. I'm in GoBundance and another one called the War Room. That's all military folks, either active or veteran, that are involved in real estate. And I meet weekly with both of those groups. Like in GoBundance, it's your GoPod, and the other mastermind, it's like your squad. And we talk about our goals, especially as in GoBundance, like you got the one sheet where you are very clear quantitatively about what your goals are. And then we do in my pod, we do quarterly follow-ups like, hey, how's your progress going? So really putting some intentional deep thought into what your goals are, and then being in a group, being surrounded by people that you trust, that will hold you accountable for those goals. Because if you're like, hey, my goal is to do X, Y, and Z this week, we're going to have some accountability next week. And you're going to have to say, did you achieve that? If not, why? Like, what happened? So, not wanting to let them down, not wanting to let yourself down. So it's really writing down those goals, and not just that writing down, but sharing them with other people and being really open about your goals and your why, and then them not just holding you accountable, but helping you achieve your goals along the way. So I think you can't do it by yourself. I think joining a mastermind group for anyone that is serious about real estate or anything else, really, I mean, find a group of like-minded people, surround yourself with them, and that's how you're really going to grow.
I love that. Yeah. Especially if you're working with people that you really connect with and respect on a certain level, and also have the discipline as well. I mean, I think it's really hard to find these mastermind groups that has the people that think just like you. I think that's part of the issue. That's why, you look for these quality mastermind groups, to be able to find those people that can help you get to where you want to go. And then you're going to add value back to them as well, hold them accountable to it too. But I'm also wondering too, like when you're setting goals, I know that you can do that within a group. There's a lot of this that's done independently. And so, what are you doing to bring those goals to the group? Like, how are you thinking about the goals there? Like, are you talking about what you want to do and then backing it out into quarterly goals? Talk a little bit more about like how you're reviewing them on your own, things that maybe people can take away if they don't quite have an accountability partner yet, but want to get into it.
Yeah. So I think, like I mentioned a little earlier, where do you want to be in 10 years, for example? Take that. Okay. Maybe your goal is, a big one of mine is passive income, so that I don't have to work a W-2, right? So, I look at, let's say 20,000 a month passive, like really big, daunting goal, right? But if you break that down, okay, what do I need to do? Where do I need to be in 5 years? Where do I need to be in a year? And you just break it down in chunks. And so for example, this year I wanted to increase my passive income. I think it was only like, I'd have to check my one sheet, but I think it was only, like 1,000 or 2,000 this year, which that's much more manageable. Like that's a few properties. That's a, one deal, one commercial deal, so, but if I do that and I keep assessing that every year for the next few years, like I'm going to surpass that other, that bigger goal. So it's just breaking it down and seeing what do I need to do this year? And then not just what's my passive income this year, but how am I actually going to achieve that? Because that's something I briefed my one sheet to the San Diego GoBundance guys. And, one of them asked, they're like, okay, your goal is this, like, how are you going to do that? Like what? And then I was like, well, right, I'm going to get this many birds in Oklahoma. And they're like, okay, cool. Because if you're just like, just some arbitrary goal, how to get to do it, you're like, I don't know. Like, well, then that's, you gotta be specific about your goals and how you're going to get there. So I don't know if that answers your question, but that's
it does. I think it sounds like it's really kind of this iterative process where you've got the goals to set, and then you have people to hold you accountable to how to get them if you don't know yourself, right? Like the idea is that when you're setting these goals, you're trying to figure out like, okay, what type of person do I have to be and what do I have to do in order to get them? And by having these accountability partners, they're forcing you to say, how are you going to do this? And then you're going to be like, well, I'm going to do X, Y, Z. And then they're holding you accountable to that, so you actually do your goals, right? So I love that whole thing. And again, this is like GoBundance 101. And for those listeners out there that are listening to this, and maybe it sounds foreign to you, but you like the sound of it, please get yourself involved in Emerge or Ascend. I think it's Emerge, right? That Jamie Gruber heads up. There's a ton of information on that online. Go find out like how you can get involved there, because you can find people that are just like you trying to do something. And then there's other mastermind groups out there too. So I'm not going to knock them as well because I don't know them, but I do know that Emerge and Ascend works. And then the GoBundance team is just amazing. So anyway, that being said, I want to ask you one last question before we go into the rapid round here. Last question is, what do you wish that you knew starting out if you had to do this whole journey all over again?
So my first thought goes back to, I think a similar question was asked in Park City to one of the guys when they were doing their like horizontal income stuff. And or it might've been Mike McCarthy actually who answered it. He said that he wished he had tried to go bigger earlier. And I think and that just goes back to getting out of your comfort zone. So a lot of people are like, ooh, I want to get started in real estate, single family home. That's great. That's how a lot of people start. That's how I started. But I kind of wish I had made the jump a little sooner, because we are there's a lot of limiting beliefs that we have as human beings. Like, oh, I can't, apartment complex, like I can't do that. Like that's for people like Donald Trump and like these, big real estate moguls to do. Like, not me. I'm just a regular person, but like it's regular people that do all these commercial deals, right? So I think going bigger sooner would be some advice I'd give myself, because even if you fail, the amount that you're going to learn along the way is going to be so impactful, and then you're just going to reach your goals that much sooner.
Yeah. I think the reason that people start small is because that's where their mindset is when they start this journey. Like they know that they want to get there. So if I was going to take away something from this, Doug, to kind of go a layer deeper, and I want to get your thoughts on it, is work on your mindset. Yeah. A lot of people are saying, oh, I want to get X, Y, Z. I want to achieve something. Well, you can definitely dig a 100-foot hole with a pickaxe, or I'm sorry, with a spoon if you want to. Mm-hmm. But if you really want to get there fast, right, get like a shovel or a pickaxe, or get all those tools, right? And give yourself, to do it. Yeah, or hire someone to do it. I love that. That's way better. But I think you know what I mean, right? It's like if your mindset, like I'm a pure believer that when you start small, that's just where you are. So if that's where you are and that's where you need to be to feel confident and then grow and get to the next step, then do it. But I think, Doug, like it's easy for us to say, man, start bigger, like faster and earlier. But my thought is on this, and I'd love to hear what you think, is that we are just there and we don't know that we could be that person unless you surround yourself around the people, and then you bring your mindset up to be that actual person that can do things bigger straight from the beginning. Does that make sense?
Exactly. Yeah.
What do you think?
And I think you nailed it. It's like surrounding yourself with the people that have done it before. That's key.
Yeah, I love that, man. All right, cool. Well, Doug, this is awesome. I've really enjoyed this conversation because I've seen a lot of like what I've done in what you're doing right now, and it's super inspirational. And hopefully for a lot of the listeners out there who are starting out or looking to scale where they're going, they can take a lot away from what you're sharing with us here. So what we're going to do, we're going to head into the rapid round, and it is 5 questions that we ask every one of our guests, and they're meant to be answered in about 30 seconds or so. So are you ready?
Ready. Let's do it.
All right. Number 1. What book has had the biggest impact on you and why? And we ask that it not be either the Bible or the Purple Bible, which is the Rich Dad Poor Dad.
Rich Dad Poor Dad. Yeah. So I think so. I'm gonna say a book that probably a lot of your listeners haven't read. Rich Dad Poor Dad has been impactful, obviously, but another one lesser known is called The Road Less Stupid by Keith Cunningham. Have you read that one?
I haven't. I'm adding it to my list now.
It's so good. He's like 30 seconds. So he's like a serial entrepreneur, very experienced guy. And he basically breaks down like things to do, things not to do in business. And the concept of thinking time, which is like critical thinking about problems you're having in your business. It's great. We've incorporated that into our business, and we do weekly discussions on it. So yeah, The Road Less Stupid by Keith Cunningham is excellent.
Love it, man. Awesome. Number 2, if people wanted to emulate your success, what is the first actionable thing they could do to follow in your footsteps? And before you answer, I think I know what you're going to say, but
so I will say join a mastermind group. Because we've hit on that a bunch, I would say live well below your means, because and have as high a savings rate as possible. Because if you want to get started in real estate, you have to have good credit, you have to have a good debt to income. So you have to have a solid foundation in personal finance just to get started in real estate with that first house. So I would say, have those sound personal finances, have those good foundations, and it all starts with living well beneath your means.
Yeah, love that. Fantastic. Number 3, what is one tool, process, or hack in the last 3 months that has helped you save time and or effort in your business or personal life?
So we have started using on the Burr side, well, really not just the Burr, but on business in general side, we've been using both Slack and Asana. Slack is a messaging tool, and you can like have team members on it. You can have different channels where you're talking about different topics. And then Asana is great it's technically a project management tool, but you can assign tasks to different people. They actually integrate with each other, Slack and Asana. So and there's free versions of both that are more than what we need. So it's like not even that expensive. So Slack and Asana.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And actually for the listeners out there who have listened to a bunch of shows, you'll notice that is a common pattern. we're hearing Asana, Monday, ClickUp, like all these project management softwares have been a huge game changer. And it makes total sense because the project manager in me says, yes, more project management is a better thing. So let's do it.
This actually reminds me, I have outstanding tasks in my Asana that I'm like, oh shit, I forgot about this. So,
yeah, see, there you go.
If the task is created, then you're like, oh shit, I want to knock that task off, because it's like satisfying to knock it off. So
yeah, for sure. And there's really cool automations that you can do too with the paid version of Asana. And then also you can use Zapier too to do some stuff as well. And they have free versions too.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. All right. Number 4, if the people that you know had to describe you with one word, what do you think that word would be?
That's a good question. There's a lot of words, some positive, some negative. Straightforward would be a good word.
Cool. I like that.
Both good and bad,
Yeah, I like that. I think that's a very straightforward answer. I love it. Yeah. Number 5, what is one small thing that most people do not know about you?
I've been struck by lightning before.
You got to be kidding. Seriously?
No. So yeah. So I was actually in an aircraft. So in the Navy F-18 Super Hornet aircraft, we were flying through some weather, and our aircraft was struck by lightning, and everything like shut down for like a second, and then like came back up, and everything was fine. The lightning entered the front right of the aircraft and exited the back left, and it like blew out the left aileron and the left stabilator. But yeah, it was fine. But yeah, struck by lightning.
Wow. I bet it must have been really loud too. Like it must have sounded like,
so it actually wasn't loud at all. And I think that's because typically when lightning strikes and it's loud, it's when it's hitting the ground. But since it just struck us in the air, it was just a bright flash of light, and everything shut down for like a second, and we're like, oh shit. And then it came back up and it was fine. But yeah, it was kind of scary for a second there.
That must have been really scary while you're flying an airplane. When the power shuts off, I imagine it must be eerily quiet. Or I guess you have gas engines, right? Like, were you guys using props, or was it a gas?
No, this was like 2 jet engines. So and we were also flying off a carrier. So we're in the middle of like the ocean somewhere in a cloud. Yeah. So yeah, it was.
Wow, that's very interesting. The engineers that come up with the ways to engineer for a lightning strike while you're up in the sky, it's just amazing. I love it.
Boeing, they know what they're doing with the tactical aircraft. They're good at it. So. Sure.
Definitely. All right. Well, very cool, Doug. Dude, it's been an honor having you on the show, and I loved having you to talk about all your experience and your journey. If people wanted to find out more about you or just see what's going on in your world in general, how can they do that?
Yeah, absolutely. So love connecting with anyone chatting about real estate, especially military folks that are getting started on their journey or want to go from, 1 to 2 properties, that kind of thing. I'd say reach out on Instagram. We're pretty active there at Honor and Equity on Instagram, and then also honorandequity.com. You can also email me directly, Doug, DOUG, at honorandequity.com. And we always have investment opportunities going on. So feel free to reach out to ask about those, ask about the deal funnel, or if you just want to chat real estate so that my wife doesn't hear me talking about it all the time. So feel free to reach out.
That's awesome. And yeah, thank you, Doug, so much for coming on the show. I encourage the listeners to please reach out to Doug if you have any questions, and just follow him on socials. And we'll link to all of that in the show notes for everyone listening on the show as well. So Doug, thank you so much for coming on the show, man. It's been awesome.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Derek.
Absolutely. And for you listeners who have been listening to the podcast and have gotten to this point, I want to thank you guys for doing so. So please, wherever you are listening or you're watching this, please like, comment, subscribe, rate the comment, give us a review, tell us how we're doing, because all of that stuff helps appease the algorithm gods. And then we get more exposure to more individuals. And that helps us to bring on more high-powered guests just like Doug on the show. So thank you, dear listener, for coming on the show. And this is Derek signing off. We'll see you guys next week. Take care.